Well, welcome back everybody. Today we're going to introduce some new terminology, one of which is domain and the other is range. And we're introducing this now. We're going to be talking about functions, and we'll be talking about the domain and range of functions all year long. So the thing that you need to remember right now, and you're going to write in your notes, is that domain refers to all the x's, and the range refers to all the y's. So we'll be talking about graphs, and a lot of this will be clear soon enough. We have to just introduce the language though. So for right now, just remember that domain is all the x's and range is all the y's. So the other thing we're going to introduce, some new terminology or new vocabulary, is interval notation. And interval notation is the way we can put a numerical understanding around the domain and range. So it can be very confusing to some people because it looks like a coordinate, the way it's written, whereas there's sometimes parentheses, then a number and a comma and another number and an end of parentheses, and it looks a lot like a coordinate, an x, comma, y coordinate, but it isn't. The interval notation tells you where the domain or range starts and where the domain or range ends. And so if you can picture a graph, the graph has x values that go left and right, right? So so your x values start on the left, right over here, and they go to the right. So when we write domain, we start with the left and then end with the right. And with range, we are starting at the bottom, and we are going up to the top. And that's how we're going to write our range as well. So again, you're learning new vocabulary, so it's going to take a while to sink in. But interval notation also comes in a couple flavors. So you will use parentheses for points on the domain or range that are not included in that domain or range. And you'll use brackets when you indicate that a point on the function is included in that domain or range. And the best way to understand this is to see an example. So now we're going to use an example of an actual function. This is actually a line segment that's drawn on a graph. And you can see our axis is right here. Hope you can see the numbers okay. And what we're going to do is, again, we're going to build our domain and range. So our domain is, from this graph, we have to project onto the x-axis all the x points that we would have with this graph. So if you look, you have right here a point that follows, and the x value for this point right here, if you project it onto the x-axis, is 1. So that's the smallest x value that this red line will ever have. So that's the smallest value. We're just going to put a 1 here, up here to designate the start of our domain. And then we're going to go all the way to the end, the highest value for our x value, and that is going to be right here at 5. So we'll write a comma and then a 5. And so the other thing I want you to notice is we need to figure out, are we going to use closed brackets or open brackets? So because this right here is a closed circle, it indicates that there is a point at x equals 1. So we will use a closed bracket around that 1. But when you go all the way over here and you look and you see this open circle right here, that indicates that it never actually will get to the value of 5. It will get close to the value of x equals 5, but it never will actually get there. It will get to like 4.999999, but it will never get to 5. So that's why we indicate an open or a parentheses. We call it an open, a parentheses. So this is how we indicate the domain in interval form of this graph. Now I want you to think about, what would the range be? What do you think the range would be? For the range, we're going to project this graph onto the y-axis. So we'll go from our smallest point for the graph, and we'll project it onto the y-axis. What is that point right there? It's when y equals, well, actually, it doesn't actually equal 2, but it gets close to 2 because we have an open circle. So we're going to write -2. I'm sorry, it's a -2 right there. Okay. And then we also have to look at what is this function's highest value. And we are going to take the highest point on the graph and project it right here. And we get a 3, right? This is 2, this is 4, so this must be 3 right here. So we're going to put a comma and a 3. And now let's go back and think about, do we want open brackets or do we want a parentheses or a bracket defining these points? So since this is an open circle, we're going to use a parenthesis. And our highest value, 3 for the y's, is going to be a closed bracket because you see this is a closed circle like that. Okay? So that's what I want you to remember, is how to find this range and domain. And again, the ranges are all the y's that this function, this graph could ever be, and the domain is all the x's that the graph could ever be.